I have another treat for everybody today. I have a guest who has agreed to speak with me, and she's coming all the way from California. She's very highly qualified. She's been a nurse for more than 30 years, and she has a doctoral degree from the University of California at Berkeley, or Berkeley, I should say, shouldn't I, since you're American? And her message is save your own life. She does a fabulous job inspiring and motivating listeners to take action. And when I say listeners, she has a huge number of audiences, people who've heard her because she's a very proficient speaker. So Lynn, have I left anything out? Is there anything you'd like to say at this point?
Just that I am thrilled and really honored to be able to be here with you today, Anne. Thank you.
I'm delighted to have you here. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what prompted you to work as a mentor in the area of wellness?
I was raised in Detroit, Michigan. My father was a policeman. My mother was a social worker. And then after she raised her 6 children, went on to be a teacher. So I believe that it was early training and early encouragement to give back. So I chose nursing as a career. And when I got involved with it, I saw the narrow limitation of medicine. You talk about mind, body, spirit, which is why I'm so happy to be on your podcast. But I really realized that the medical care was pretty much focused just on the body and didn't take a lot of the healing elements in. So over the course of my career, I just saw how important it was for all of us to have mentors in the healing arena.
You are so right, because we're kind of brought up with the idea of authority, and anybody in a white coat knows everything, and whatever they tell you is the right thing. And
well, I did consider wearing a white coat for this discussion, but I thought I'll pass on that.
What was I going to say? Yes, there's always a choice. I'm very big on choice, and there are so many alternatives to chemical remedies.
I actually had a cassette system many years ago called Smart Choices for Optimal Health. And I agree, it's all about choice. No one has taken our choice away from us. We can make choices.
Absolutely. And you have a book with a rather interesting title, which I found very interesting. It's called Cherish the Girls, a well-rounded approach to breast health and wellness. What have readers particularly liked about that book?
I think readers like the fact that it gives women permission to do what it is that they want to do for their health and well-being, but even more importantly, that the fact that there are many ways that one can do healing, that they can go ahead and look at diet or look at a lot of different interventions that can support their own health and well-being, that there's so many ways that we can make ourselves healthier that doesn't really come up so much in the marketplace.
That's right. But, you know, there are so many issues connected with that part of us as girls. Women are well known for consulting the doctor more than men do. But I think partly as a result of research and testing that's been available for the last 20, 30 years, whatever, I think perhaps women are trained to stress too much about their breasts.
Well, if you listen to the narrative, and I don't know what it is globally, but I will tell you from my experience is there's a drumbeat about watching one's breast, making care, basically making the assumption that we have a problem, that we're just going to have to wait and find out when it shows up, which is absurd. The truth is, my first book was going to be on touch. I love touch. It's so important in healing. But I just felt compelled to write the book on breast health because I believe women are target marketed very heavily for consumption of healthcare services. And they are taught to distrust their breasts and distrust their health and that they must go for regular monitoring to make sure they're okay. Well, it doesn't make sense to me. In fact, the truth is I wrote the book. I also included a chapter on cancer. I didn't even want to talk about cancer because there's so much that's possible with it, but it's one of those areas that's the elephant in the room. Some women will say, you wrote a book on breast health. Did you have cancer? No, I didn't have cancer. It's why I wrote a book on breast health, because I'm involved in wellness. So the whole thing is, it's a challenge. It's something that women have to come to terms with. And in my experience, it teaches us all about more personal empowerment. When I mentor my clients, we look at empowerment before we're looking at scans. Women can do what they want to do, but at our core, we want to feel well, healthy, vital, and whole.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And of course, this word cancer, there are still many, many people who will not say it. They'll use a euphemism like the big C, because if you are diagnosed with a cancer, and this is so wrong, but if this is the diagnosis that you get, it's seen as a death sentence.
Well, some might say it's a death sentence if they believe that, or if they go down a certain path where there is a high probability. One of the things I know for sure is that I have seen every form of cancer being treated positively, and I've seen some very minor forms of cancer not end well. And a great deal has to do with one's belief system and the extent to which they're interested in really involving themselves and being empowered with their own self-care. I don't have a tea leaves that'll tell me how what the outcomes are going to be, but I strongly believe that women can be more empowered with all kinds of care.
I fully agree. So, do you think that a woman should question her doctor's advice?
I think a woman who pays for advice should listen to the advice. And I think a woman who is in charge of her own body and care needs to work with her provider to get the best care she wants. That's what the provider really wants. One of my clients said she went to her doctor and the doctor says, you have breast cancer, you need to have a mastectomy. She went to see someone else and the person says, that's not at all the right diagnosis, and surely you don't need a mastectomy. Like anything else, we have to take into consideration how it feels and how it lands for us. So sure, I think women should discuss all treatment options. The big problem here is when people get involved in what they may call alternative care. What's alternative? I mean, one might say it's traditional healing. And then we have a mainstream and we have conventional care. There are a lot of different ways to describe care. But I suggest that women do not go to someone who's an expert in one particular area and who knows nothing about another area of healing and expect that same provider to know about the area of healing that they have no experience with. That's putting them in an awkward position, and it also doesn't make sense. Why do we ask a person who has expertise in one area to become an expert in another area when that's not even their interest? They have their own specialty. It can be quite challenging, which is why I suggest women settle down, take a look at what's going on, look at their alternatives, and really clue into themselves and get the right support to do this exploration.
So when you say one expert or practitioner, I forget the word that you used, do you mean, for example, why expect a doctor to know about this, that, and the next problem?
Exactly. The doctor's a specialist in medicine, and they have a whole body of medicine that they're looking at, and their preferred forms of treatment. So, for example, acupuncture is pretty popular. Why would we expect a doctor to know a lot about acupuncture when they haven't studied it, or they may not know anything about it? Why would we put them in that position to be an expert or give expert advice about it?
Well, I wouldn't expect my doctor to know anything about the so-called alternative therapies. I meant more in terms of expecting the doctor to be able to identify or suggest treatments for this problem, that problem, the next problem. We expect what should I say, the medical fraternity to have all the answers. You might have to see a different person, but there is certainly in the UK, we have the National Health Service, and you might have to wait quite a long time. In fact, it's off the scale now, the waiting times, but that's a different story. You would get referred to a specialist in your particular problem area, and then you're supposed to take the advice you're given.
There's a certain amount of conditioning globally for that, isn't there, Anne?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Here's the advice, follow the advice. If you didn't want it, why did you come? Well, I came because I wanted an opinion and I wanted some counseling. And at the same time, even though with your National Health Service, you need to wait for a particular provider to serve care, we've already discussed different forms of care that you could probably see tomorrow, and I'm sure you have, when you need some kind of care.
Personally, well, of course I have, but I know
Right.
plenty of people who actually believe that the National Health has all the answers. I think it's falling away now. It has to, because all the doctors have disappeared in the last 2 years. It's really strange. It's extremely difficult to even to get to see your GP in the local surgery.
Well, maybe that's a way that might help wake people up to different forms of care. If you have care, if we're not hemorrhaging, if we were hemorrhaging, we would get care immediately. Most of what we have is chronic, and there are so many options. And I think today is really, it's even more critical for everyone to say what else could help, even starting with food. One of my clients went to their doctor, and the doctor said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "I'm using a different diet." And he said, well, he didn't care. Her new diet was eating more real food and less processed food and paying more attention, being more conscious with her food. But the doctor, that wasn't their realm of expertise. So they didn't even have a question about what the new diet was, when in fact it was a real food diet.
Well, you know, what many people might not be aware of is the average doctor, in the past anyway, received half a day's training on food and nutrition in their notorious 7 years of on-the-job training, study, whatever. Half a day of nutritional training. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Quite.
But I believe functional nutrition is becoming quite well thought of now, and many doctors are studying it in depth, and I'm delighted, absolutely delighted. Anyway, back to you, Lynn. What qualifies you to be a mentor in the area of wellness?
I have to say that I feel like I've been placed here. I feel like I've been truly blessed to be able to mentor people. I've spent my life in healthcare. One of my graduate degrees from UCLA was in community mental health nursing. And the idea of being really involved with the emotional aspect of care, which I feel is so important. I've had experience in all different clinical areas. And I also believe that when I've been involved with people who are in the workplace, when the workplace gets shattered because of bad news from people come in with illnesses and what have you, I've just been privileged to be in a position where I've had a lot of experience of different work environments and different conditions and different personalities that I can support people in their own healing. And I believe that we all have our own teachers. I may not be the best person for everyone, but there are people who I do speak to. And then there are people who speak to you, because I know that you're in the same business, your mind, body, spirit. So.
That's right. When we were chatting before this, you mentioned that you have something huge to offer businesses, how you could save them money and well, sort out their staff's attitude to this nonsense that's still going on at the moment.
I think businesses must pay attention to the extent to which their employees are disempowered around health. You cannot have someone coming into the workplace with a serious diagnosis without everyone being affected, which is why I like to support leaders and exhibiting leadership when it comes to wellness in the workplace. Not everybody wants to be well, and not everybody wants to have a strong, empowered attitude, and we can support people who do. if that makes sense to you, Anne.
It makes sense to me, yes. And of course, a happy, healthy, balanced workforce is going to make for a more profitable business.
Right.
So Lynn, it's been great talking with you. Really
Oh, my pleasure.
educational. How can people get in touch with you?
Very simply, I have a simple email address, Nurse Lynn, NURSELYNN, the number 4 wellness @gmail. And
Okay,
I have,
we'll put that in the show notes.
thank you. So Nurse Lynn for wellness @gmail. And I have a special gift for all of your listeners. And I've spent time on this. I believe it's a product of value. It's 5 steps can create breast wellness. So it's a report. 5 steps can create breast wellness, which is free for anyone who wants to go to Nurse Lynn for wellness, number 4, @gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Lynn. All of us girls will find that very beneficial, I'm certain.
And the book is on Amazon as an ebook and as a print book.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh, your lectures. Are you contactable to lecture either online or in person?
Absolutely. I have a website, lynnfraley.com, where people can get information. And I'm happy to support organizations of any size, online or on Zoom, to support healthy workplaces or audiences for associations. I've had a lot of experience doing speaking and training, and I love being able to do that. So thank you for asking.
Brilliant. Anything else then before we wrap this up?
Just a pleasure to speak with you and to be honored by someone who has spent their life working in mind, body, spirit in the many ways that you have. I support anyone who's listening to this podcast to go online, listen to Anne's other podcasts, review them, make comments about them in the search engines where you're finding them.
You're too kind, Lynn, and you must come back sometime.
I look forward to it.
You.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your time.